Awesome. Welcome everyone to tonight's September Worker Strike Back meeting. We are tonight discussing the crisis that the Democratic Party is in, a crisis that's fueled by their total lack of any fight back against the attacks from the Trump administration on immigrants, working people, and all those who are marginalized, and their total complicity in the ongoing brutal genocide in Gaza. As a result of the Democratic Party, as a result of these things, the Democratic Party as a whole, but especially the Democrats in Congress, are hitting a historic gutter level approval rating. It's clear that it's time to build an independent movement, and that's why it's really exciting that we have independent socialists, the strongest anti-genocide, pro-worker campaign that we're going to be building, right? And to that end, I want to have Matthew up, who's going to be talking about doing the postering blitz. After our meeting tonight, we want to make sure that we hit the town with as many posters as we can. So, Matthew, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. This is my first Worker Strike Back meeting in this building, so I'm very excited to be here. As Shirley said, my name is Matthew Malloy. I am a member of Worker Strike Back. So to build for this rally, we are doing weekly postering blitzes and coordinated banner drops in Seattle and around the city. Our independent campaign for the U.S. Congress has to contend with a media blackout from progressive Democrat-aligned media and gatekeepers who want to protect and rehabilitate the image of the Democratic Party and their representatives. In order to make this breakthrough and continue to build, we need coordinated actions to make this campaign undeniable and break through the gatekeepers to reach working people directly. That's what we've done with tables and door knocking and phone banking around the country, and we're ramping up things over the next 4 weeks to build for the October 12th rally. For example, we had planned a banner drop this morning. We ended up not doing a banner drop, but we stood on a corner with our big banner and picket signs, drawing the attention of people in cars, honking, cheering, and building the excitement for this campaign. But tonight, we are going to engage in the Paint the Town Red by using the iconic red and white theme from Kshama's City Council office. These are the posters you see in front of you. So tonight, after this Worker Strike Back meeting, we have prepared door knocking and poster bags for y'all to join us for our first Paint the Town Red postering event. So after the meeting, I'll be going over what's in the postering bag, good practice, a quick tutorial and things like that. But yeah, I hope y'all can join us for Paint the Town Red after this meeting. So thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you so much, Matthew. Next item on the agenda, I wanted to welcome up Jonathan. Jonathan is a Worker Strike Back member and a member of the National Coordinating Committee, the elected leadership of Worker Strike Back. He is someone who has been giving the rich and powerful trouble for over 40 years. As a labor organizer, he's helped workers organize, bargain, and strike in industries from warehousing and logistics, higher education, healthcare, and public services. He also fought alongside and then worked for a number of years for our Kshama's Socialist City Council office, independent socialist council office. He just published a book, We Are Coming for You and Your Rotten System, How Socialists Beat Amazon and Upended Big City Politics, which is about the historic gains that were won through the leadership that it took from Kshama and her fellow Marxists to win major gains like the nation's highest minimum wage, the Amazon tax that raises hundreds of millions of dollars a year for affordable housing. This all in the context of working people everywhere else across the country experiencing attack after attack. So the historic lessons are really critical, and we are so grateful that Jonathan has taken time to chronicle this historic period in Seattle history. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Shirley. Great to be with everybody here tonight. How many people are joining Matthew and the rest of us in postering tonight? Okay. And if you can't tonight, take some posters home and do your neighborhood. Let's paint the whole town red because the town certainly needs it. So, yeah, okay. The name of the book is We Are Coming for You and Your Rotten System, How Socialists Beat Amazon and Upended Big City Politics. And it's taken from Kshama's speech when we won the Amazon tax in 2020, as she warned Jeff Bezos and the billionaires that we're fighting for much more than just a tax, we're fighting for a democratic and socialist society. How many people were there when we won the tax? Okay, a number of people? Yep. And, yeah. Now, we have to be honest, not everybody we engage with in the movement is really comfortable with this title. And a fellow union member of mine invited me on his podcast this week, last week actually. He's not a radical, but he does lean left politically. And before starting the recording, he asked me if it was okay if I announced the book title instead of him. Well, that's highly unusual for an interviewer, but clearly he was uneasy saying the words, "We are coming for you and your rotten system." But words matter, right? We have to name the problem, because if you don't give a correct diagnosis, then you won't come up with the right cure. Yes, the system that we live under is rotten. Its name is capitalism, and it's rotten because at its most basic, it is an economic system of producing and distributing goods based on profit, not human need. There are many people in the broader movement who are like my union sibling. They agree that things in our society are unjust, unfair, that corporate landlords suck, that healthcare executives are ravenous wolves, and that we have to wipe out racism and bigotry. But they have a hard time taking the next step, coming to terms with the fact that these problems are not the result of an accident or a mistake under capitalism, but rather are the intended result. They are endemic to the system. So they talk about how broken the healthcare system is, with millions denied care while the CEOs make billions. But healthcare isn't broken in this country. It's working exactly as its profiteering designers intended. That's right. They march on picket lines and declaim how labor law is weak and dysfunctional. Well, labor law is, but it's working exactly as its designers intended it to work. They agree that the Democratic Party has failed working people again and again, yet they think that by running progressive candidates within the party, somehow we can wrest control and turn the party into a force for the good. They need to pay heed to what Nancy Pelosi famously said in 2017, quote, "We're capitalists, and that's just the way it is," end quote. We should trust Pelosi's words, at least on this matter. Now, if we want to build a movement that fights for what Workers' Strike Back stands for, free health care, ending the genocidal war on Palestine, stopping mass deportations, ending police violence, especially in black and brown communities, winning a Green New Deal, and facing up to the climate crisis and more, we need to win over people like my friend, and people you know too, who still operate under the delusion that you can reform capitalism, that you can reform the Democratic Party, that you can reform the racist police state. We have to explain how there are two sides to these fights, and you have to pick a side. You can't straddle the fence. This is a big organizing task. It is a lifelong challenge for all of us. I wrote We're Coming for You and Your Rotten System as a contribution to the movement to help meet this challenge. The book shows how, over the decade that we held socialist office in city council, we beat the political and economic elites, and we won breakthrough victories for working people. 15, renters' rights, Indigenous Peoples' Day, abortion funding, caste discrimination ban, Gaza ceasefire resolution, mental health funding, tiny house villages, and of course the Amazon tax, including working with Reverend Jeffrey in this very church, money specifically used to reverse racist gentrification and build housing right here in the black community. But beyond reciting these and other victories, my book notes how we won, not by accommodating or by playing the political establishment's game, but by hewing to three core principles of Marxist insurgent politics. First, we recognize that our fights were about competing interests between us and the rich and powerful, between two competing classes. Kshama and our independent socialist movement understood that today's political arena is not some open ground for the contest of ideas. Rather, the political order is specifically set up and designed to uphold and reinforce the status quo. So to achieve anything, we had to reject that order and break its rules. We had to disrupt. Secondly, we advanced bold, concrete demands that reflected our authentic needs as working people, both because we need big change and also because we wanted to show capitalism's inability to meet our basic needs and thereby point the way towards socialism as the underlying solution. And third, we practiced popular movement democracy, the ongoing engagement of community members in setting demands and in deciding strategies for how to wage battle. Our socialist work stands as a sharp counterpoint to the inside-the-party strategies favored by the Squad and other progressive activists. AOC's Green New Deal has vanished from the scene. Bernie has abandoned Medicare for all. But we won major breakthroughs right here because our work here has a distinct theory, method, and discipline. So these are the important lessons, especially as we seek to win over folks who agree that we need change but don't yet share the same analysis, who want to believe that somehow we can reform capitalism, who still have faith in institutions that have betrayed working people time and time again. These are all understandable impulses, and as we listen to and engage with and empathize with our friends, we also have to challenge them to think about a different way forward. So, buy my book. I'm donating $10 to Workers Strike Back for every book that is sold tonight. Drain my family's checking account, please. Get a copy, or better yet, do what Raghav did last week and buy 5 copies, one for yourself, the others for your family and friends, folks who still need to be convinced that the system is rotten and there's no way forward. This book shows them not just the necessity of our approach to political struggle, but also the tremendous possibilities when we adopt a fighting socialist method. Let's go get Kshama elected in solidarity.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'd really recommend we're moving into the fall, moving toward the holiday season. People should do their holiday shopping by buying Jonathan's book.
That's right.
I also had the task of introducing Kshama for our next agenda point, and Jonathan made it a lot easier, and that'll keep us on time, so thank you. We didn't introduce at the beginning, but I'm Patrick. This is Shirley. We're going to be co-chairing tonight's meeting. And I want to talk about basically just the format of the rest of the meeting so we can get into things. I'm giving you a rare guarantee as chair that this meeting will end by 7:30. I know. And it's because we have postering coming up after this. We want to end pretty snappy right on time so as many people as possible are able to make that. And so basically the length of our main discussion is going to be timed out to end just in time so we can be wrapped up by 7:30. For our main discussion, Kshama is going to give an introduction for around 20 minutes. Then we're going to have Jason up to give a brief appeal for people who haven't joined yet to join Workers Strike Back because it's important for us to all be involved in this fight. And then we'll have basically close to the remainder of the meeting for an open discussion with the whole group. I'd ask that people, if you're comfortable with it, come up to the podium and speak. Because there's a microphone here, that way we can all hear you, and also because we do live stream these on our social media. So the topic of this meeting is the Democrats in crisis, time to build an independent movement, and it's very appropriate that we have Kshama here to kick off that discussion. As Jonathan mentioned, during her 10 years on the Seattle City Council, Kshama used her office to build movements independent of the Democratic Party, with an understanding that the Democrats are not our friends, they're not just misguided and open to persuasion. They're our enemies. They get hundreds of thousands of dollars from corporate backers, and everything that we win is going to be by building movements independently that force them to take action. One of the most universal points of agreement I get when I talk to voters in our district is also that we need a new party for working people because the Democrats and Republicans both don't work for us. It's an easier and easier sell, and it's shockingly easy talking to random voters who have never heard of Kshama Sawant before because they're outside Seattle. This is by far the biggest point of agreement that I get. And we're going to use this campaign to show working people exactly how to build that sort of movement that we need, an independent movement that will take on both the Republicans and the Democrats who are failing to put up a fight back. And so with that, I'm going to introduce former socialist and former Seattle City Council member and an elected member of Worker Strike Back's National Coordinating Committee, Kshama Sawant.
There have been some really credible scientific studies about the number of casualties in the genocide, ongoing genocide in Gaza. One of those recent studies estimates that by April of this year, the total death toll in Gaza was a staggering 680,000 deaths. By that measure, if that study is, the estimates are reliable, which I believe they are, then we're getting close to 750,000 dead. And most of these victims, as indicated in official counts, are women and children. In fact, according to a recent report cited, some leaked Israeli military intelligence who themselves acknowledge that the civilian death rate is estimated to be over 80%. The Israeli state's openly stated objective is ethnic cleansing of Palestinian people from the region. The Gaza genocide is in aid of this larger Israeli project of ethnic cleansing. There is ethnic cleansing going on in the West Bank as well. And on top of that, the Israeli state has attacked 7 countries in the region since October 7, 2023. And the Israeli state most recently sabotaged any chance of ceasefire by brazenly bombing the Hamas leaders gathered in Doha, Qatar, for their discussion of the ceasefire deal, making sure that there is no ceasefire. All of this is possible for the Israeli state to do only with the unqualified and unconditional support from the US state as represented by both the Democratic and Republican parties. Let's not forget the first 15 of the nearly now 24 months of this genocide happened under Democratic President Biden and Democratic Congress members at the helm, Democrats like my opponent Adam Smith. And even now, both Democrats and Republicans are supporting this genocide. Bernie Sanders has finally today, almost 2 years into this genocide, finally agreed to call it a genocide. Now, the credit for that goes not to Bernie Sanders, shame on him for taking this long. Right. The credit goes to ordinary working people and courageous anti-war activists. But we have to ask, what does it even mean for Sanders to have refused to call it a genocide all this while, and now that he is calling a genocide, what exactly is he planning to do in response to that? New polls in the United States on the genocide in Gaza are just absolutely stunning. 60% of America says they oppose Israel's genocide, and over half of everybody in here believes that it is a genocide what's happening. 9% of those aged 18 to 34 approve of what Israel is doing. And only 24% of Republican voters aged 18 to 34 support Israelis over Palestinians. And 92% of people identifying as Democratic Party voters say they want the genocide to end. Those are the polls. Both the parties of capitalism are deeply unpopular. Whopping majorities of American working people are angry at both parties. President Donald Trump's approval rating remains underwater. Fully 61% of people disapprove of congressional Republicans, meaning, in the US House and the US Senate, both when we say congressional. But with an incredible 66% of people disliking them, congressional Democrats are even more popular than congressional Republicans and even more popular than Donald Trump. A Democratic Party analyst recently said the Democratic brand is so bad that they don't have the credibility to be a critic of Trump or the Republican Party. And as the New York Times recently reported, there has been a stampede, this is the word they use, there has been a stampede of working class voters away from the Democratic Party because of all their betrayals. I mean, the New York Times doesn't say it's because of the betrayals. I'm saying that. And of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, the Democratic Party has lost ground to the Republican Party in every single state in the last 4 to 5 years. And the Democratic Party's own analysts are saying that it is like the party has gone into a death cycle. And on top of all this, if this wasn't enough, a CNN poll shows that 63% of Americans want a new party, and they also don't want any new party. They reject another billionaire-backed party, such as if Elon Musk was to launch a party. So in reality, what Americans want is a new working class party, and they are saying that loud and clear. But that reality that extends across America, across blue states and red states and whatever, that reality is completely missing from Washington, D.C. If you landed from Mars and you looked at the election results in the US Congress, you would not know what the American working class actually feels. Because if you look at the election results in recent years, the incumbency rate, meaning if you're already in office, do you get elected, that incumbency rate in the US Congress has been well over 90%, with rarely more than 5 or 10 incumbents losing their seats every election cycle. How should we explain these contradictions where on the one hand people feel something really, really strongly and something that's exactly the opposite is happening in Washington, D.C. The majority want the genocide in Gaza to end, but there is no end to that. Both the Republican and Democratic parties continue to support it to the hilt. 2 in 3 Americans want universal publicly provided health care, with 90% support from the Democratic Party. Support is very high also among Republican voters, and yet there is no progress at all. Instead, CalCare, which was the California-wide Medicare for All bill, lost twice in California. A similar bill lost in Vermont. And in Washington state, a similar bill called Whole Washington from activists has been brought forward for years, and yet the Democratic Party absolutely does not move it forward. All these 3 states, California, Vermont, and Washington, are examples of the Democratic Party trifecta, meaning the governor is a Democrat, both the houses of the state legislature are controlled by Democrats, and in fact, the Democrats have had majority or super majorities, meaning veto-proof majorities in these states, meaning it doesn't even matter if there are Republicans in legislature. Democrats are so many in number, they could do anything they wanted. So why is this happening? Why is it that we working class people are falling more and more behind despite the fact that the Democrats have had majorities? It's precisely because of what Jonathan just said. It's not that they are somehow just inept and failure. They're just incompetent failures. No, that is not the case. The Democratic Party is one of the 2 parties of the ruling class, of US imperialism, of US capitalism. And so the question that we have to ask is, what is holding the Democratic Party afloat despite all these numbers of extreme unpopularity? Part of the reason is the so-called progressive Democrats. It's the leadership of the Democratic Socialists of America. There is right now, an active campaign to try and resurrect the Democratic Party that is being carried out by Bernie Sanders, AOC, and somebody who's very likely to become the mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani. It's the NGO leaders who base their careers on their relationships with the progressive Democrats and block anybody who challenges the Democrats. Fundamentally, it's all of these gatekeepers put together, and it's not just those politicians, but all of those around the Democratic Party who rely on their relationships with it. Many of them make cozy 6-figure salaries. They seriously risk losing those connections, their career, and their lifestyles if they were to step out of line with the progressive establishment. To take one example, when we were fighting for the $15 minimum wage, which later became the nation's highest minimum wage at $20.76, the labor leaders in this city were furious at us for raising the banner of $15 an hour. They grew enraged not only when we brought it forward, but they were even more infuriated when we brought forward fighting tactics, meaning in order to force the hand of the city council, we put forward a ballot initiative, and we told the city council openly, if you don't vote yes on this bill, we will take this directly to the voters, and we forced their hand by their own admission. And this is true of example after example of the victories that we won. The progressive Democrats and their supporters play the most insidious role in all of this. They work behind the scenes, vociferously work behind the scenes to undermine any serious effort at winning gains for working people. And when in the rare cases, like our decade on the city council, in the rare cases when those gatekeepers have been defeated, it's because we had a leadership that refused to capitulate to the gatekeepers. And why do they do this? This is the way the capitalist system functions. The capitalist system would not be able to remain intact even for a short while, let alone hundreds of years, if it didn't have a chronic, like a perpetual mechanism of cultivating a buffer system to protect itself. So most often, when you're fighting for working class demands, you don't directly confront the billionaires and the multimillionaires, the actual power brokers of the system. No, you will instead confront the Democratic Party and all their minions who float around in these cities and these states and across the nation, and they exist precisely to stymie working class movements. In major cities across the country, the Democrats either dominate politics or they completely own it, like in Seattle. I don't know when the last Republican was elected. I mean, self-declared Republican. That was supposed to be a joke. And one really good example of this also comes from a recent article that was published in the Seattle Times, in which the title was, "Is this the year Seattle goes socialist? It's sure looking that way." Can you believe this? We had 10 years of a socialist elected office in Seattle, and now they are publishing an article that says, "Is this the year Seattle goes socialist?" And this article is about Katie Wilson, a progressive Democratic Party candidate for Seattle mayor, who's running against out-and-out corporate Democrat Bruce Harrell. Those are your choices. In the article, they compare Katie Wilson very favorably against my 10 years as a socialist on the Seattle City Council. I wanted to quote one of the supporters of our campaign who said on social media, and I'm quoting him right now, "Why would a right-wing, pro-business newspaper like the Seattle Times run an article giving a small s socialist Democratic Party candidate coverage? The answer is to disguise what's actually a hit piece on Kshama's big S socialist campaign. In short, the Seattle billionaire class is clearly scared, by our congressional campaign." I agree with this comment. And in this article is remarkable because it quotes a progressive gatekeeper in speaking very honestly about their differences with me and my fellow Marxists and with Workers Strike Back. And in that article, Katie Wilson is quoted as saying that, as a council member, Kshama was trying to tear down the system, but mayor is an executive position. You can't run for mayor and say you want to tear down the system. You're asking to run the system. I completely agree. I don't want to run the capitalist system. I do want to tear it down.
That's right.
But here's something that is often not well understood. This explains the fundamental difference between the progressive establishment and us as revolutionary socialists. We do believe the working class needs to overthrow capitalism through workers' revolutions, and this is the part that's less understood, but it is precisely because of that revolutionary clarity that we also make the best fighters for and winners of the strongest reforms under capitalism, because it is the revolutionary clarity that understands that, as Patrick said, the Democratic Party is not our friend but is our enemy, and that our enemies are also the gatekeepers, the NGO leaders, the labor leaders, members of the progressive establishment, those who stand in our way, and that it is critical that we don't bend to them. There is another reason why all of this needs to be understood. I won't be able to talk too much about it, but we will have another member of the National Coordinating Committee, Calvin Priest, talking about this, which is the dangers, growing, grave dangers of right-wing attacks against the working class. We know that ICE isn't just about immigration, it's about normalizing secret police that violate the basic democratic rights people take for granted. And the attacks on the immigrant population who are suspected of being undocumented migrants is really just a pilot program for a larger agenda of attacking workers' movements. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk represents an increasingly dangerous moment. And as I said, Calvin will talk more about it. But I just wanted to quickly get into some of the questions that we run into all the time from very genuine people. A lot of people, especially those who have been engaged in the anti-genocide marches and rallies, will tell us, well, you know what, I'm so angry at the Democrats and Republicans, I'm off elections altogether. We just need a general strike. So, yes, I absolutely agree. We need mass strike actions leading up to general strikes, not just one. In fact, we need multiple, and those strikes need to be organized with a powerful militant strategy and bold, concrete demands. We need these strikes to happen because we need big breakthrough victories for the working class. But we need to understand a few things here. Even if we did have that, a situation where there were major strike actions and there were coordinated strikes across the nation leading up to a general strike, even if we did have all that, the working class will still need to actually defeat and destroy the parties and institutions of the ruling class. There is no way out of it. You cannot avoid that political clash. And doing all of that means building a mass workers' party, which means not a party in name, but a mass workers' party that actually runs movement-based, fighting strategy-based election campaigns of independent candidates who are ready to fight, not who are ready to make their own careers, and then actually defeating the Democratic Party. It means using all of that momentum then to take the top corporations into democratic public ownership. All of this is going to be needed, and all of this is going to be goddamn hard. It is going to take an almighty fight like the kind that we have not seen before in our lives. But it's even more sobering than that. The reality at this moment is even more sobering. It's far more sobering. And that is that the Democratic Party has managed to undermine all social movements, the workers' movements, and any efforts to create a new mass party by redirecting people back towards the idea of reforming their party. We absolutely cannot accept that the Democratic Party can be reformed. I mean, if genocide is not a line we are refusing to cross, then there is no line we're going to refuse to cross.
That's right.
And so there is no question of rescuing the soul of the Democratic Party, as Zohran Mamdani says. I strongly support the working class demands that Mamdani is running on, but I completely disagree that somehow this whole project is about saving the soul of the Democratic Party. No, the Democratic Party is completely evil and soulless. What this project has to be about fighting for and winning for the masses of poor and working people who are suffering endless miseries, even though this is the wealthiest country in the world. But let's look at the other part of the sobering reality, which is one of the hardest things and the most ignored reality, which is that the labor and NGO leadership have also completely stymied any path to working class victories. Yes, that doesn't mean that important strikes and big strike-related victories haven't happened. Of course they have. Lots of strikes have happened. Many strikes have ended up winning. Union strikes have ended up winning for the rank and file. All of that is true. But all of those victories pale in comparison with the vast wasteland of betrayals that has been created by the vast majority of the labor leadership. And that has meant that most of the labor leadership is tied to the Democratic Party. In fact, it's worse than that. Some of the key labor leaders are now making overtures towards Donald Trump and right-wing ideas. And then they have also played a big role in either stopping strikes from ever seeing the light of day, or making sure that strikes are very short, they're very ineffective, and at the end of the day don't win much for the workers. I mean, I just heard about a strike in the tech sector where 84% of the workers have said that they want to go on strike, and yet the leadership is is going to apparently think about whether the strike should happen or not. And it's not only that. If you look at the salaries, just go Google. Google AI will tell you the salaries of most of the labor leaders. You know the kind of salaries they make? $250,000 a year is a low-end salary for most of these labor leaders. And most of these labor leaders represent workers, rank and file members of their unions who are barely able to put a roof over their head and put food on the table. And not to mention, look at the fact that even though BLM was a massive movement, the leadership of BLM, who are actually misleaders, ended up sacrificing that movement for their own NGO, their NGO funding and their own salaries and their own cozy relationships with the Democratic Party. So all of this tells us that at this moment, the labor, because of the complete sort of stymieing by the labor leadership and the NGO leadership, it is very, very difficult to win the kind of massive breakthrough victories that we need for the working class. And that is why I would say that it was no coincidence that the most unparalleled victories that were won, like, when we won 15, it was the first big city in the nation, and then that victory went nationwide, and millions upon millions of workers won 15 or even higher wages. And so these victories that we won, these unparalleled victories, it was not a coincidence that it was won through an electoral victory. And it's not because it was electoral. The victories were not because it was electoral. The victories were because we had revolutionary Marxist leadership. But it did need that electoral avenue, was because that was the only way we could make a breakthrough for revolutionary Marxist ideas. And not that the labor leadership didn't try to stop us. Like I said, they came straight to my face and said, you can't talk about 15. That's not allowed. We said, well, you can't stop us. This is our campaign. That is the reality that we are living in, and that is why we should urge people who think that maybe we shouldn't have elections to say that, yeah, absolutely, if you're angry at the Democrats and Republicans, that is correct. That is why we need to defeat them, and that is why we have a concrete campaign that can actually defeat them. And that is why this campaign is important. And that also relates to the last question I want to deal with, which is a lot of people will say, okay, I'll support your campaign, but what would winning one elected position in Congress do? Congress is so much bigger than the city council. Look, yes, it is, of course it's bigger. Will it be harder? Yes. But we didn't win because the mathematics of the number of Democrats was better than in Congress. That's not why we won. We won because we were clear, our office was clear that the Democrats are not on our side, and if I start caucusing with them, that would be the death knell of everything that we were building. That is the same clarity we can take to the US Congress, and it really doesn't matter whether it is 8 Democrats or 300 Democrats. What we need is a fighting militant strategy led by these revolutionary ideas, and if we have that, a lot can be accomplished. And many of you have heard me say that if we win, which we have a real shot at winning, if we win, that I have pledged that I will turn my inauguration into a rally of 10,000 people in Washington, D.C. And we will bring a bill to end all US military aid to the Israeli state. We will bring a bill for free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich. But it's not about bringing a bill and saying, oh, who's going to vote with me? No, that's bullshit. What we will do is use that congressional position to build mass rallies across the nation, and using rank and file members, we will put pressure on the labor leadership as well to build mass strike action. So this is very much a movement-based election campaign. Everybody should join us if we want to fight and win something. Solidarity.
Party of the working class. Down with Republicans and Democrats. We need a party of the working class. Down with Republicans and Democrats. We need a party of the working class.
Hello, my name is Jason Thiel, and I'm a member of Workers Strike Back and Revolutionary Workers. Like we've been hearing all evening, we urgently need to build independently of the Democrats and Republicans, who are both parties of the bosses and parties of genocide. That is why we're campaigning to elect Kshama Sawant as an independent socialist to U.S. Congress. And that's why one of our demands with Workers' Strike Back is no more sellouts, we need a new party. Kshama's independent socialist campaign is the strongest anti-war, anti-genocide, and pro-worker campaign in the nation. It presents a concrete way forward for working class people to win the demands that we so desperately need. Free health care for all, paid for by taxing the rich, an end to all U.S. military aid to Israel, an end to the deportations, and national rent control. The Democrats will not fight for any of this. Even the progressive Democrats routinely stab working people in the back. They make all kinds of promises but have achieved nothing because of a lack of a fighting approach. And oftentimes they even carry out attacks on our movements. AOC voted to break the railroad strike and just recently took a pro-genocide vote against cutting U.S. military aid to Israel. Over and over again, working class movements have failed due to relying on this decaying party that repeatedly backpedals away from struggle and towards cozying up to big business and the establishment. We see this happening right now with Zoran Mamdani saying he will apologize for calling the NYPD racist in 2020. The attacks on working people by Democrats and the failures of progressives to fight for any of the demands that they ran on is how Trump managed to win his second term after leaving office the first time as the most unpopular president in U.S. history, and who is now carrying out an assault on immigrants, the anti-war movement, and working people's standard of living. Unfortunately, there is a real lack of clarity on this from much of the left and labor leaders, as Kshama was just talking about. That is why Workers' Strike Back and the lessons from Kshama's decade on Seattle City Council are so badly needed right now. Our biggest challenge is building an independent movement strong enough to overcome not only the opposition of big business, but also the misleadership of progressive Democratic politicians and NGO or union leaders who are trying to herd us back into the Democratic or Republican parties. Part of that task is spreading the lessons of the Kshama's Council office and the historic fighting movements that it helped to launch and organize. When Kshama fought for the first major city $15 minimum wage in Seattle, it was seen as utopian and opposed by every Democrat on the city council and much of the labor and NGO leadership. But it was won despite them by building a fighting movement and bringing working people into the fight to force the Democrats to concede. This same type of fighting movement will be needed to win any significant victory for working people. That is why we launched Workers' Strike Back, to take forward this fighting strategy that won victory after victory and spread it nationally. This will require building our membership in every city. Some people here are not already members of Workers' Strike Back, but membership is a crucial way to get organized and become active in our campaigns, including the Kshama for Congress campaign, as well as our fight for a ballot initiative in Seattle to win free health care for all by taxing the rich, $5 billion a year. For those of you who are not members of Workers' Strike Back, can you sign up today to help us build the type of fighting movement needed to end the genocide in Gaza and all U.S. military funding to Israel? Becoming a member means contributing financially to help us carry out our work. Our average monthly dues are around $25 per month per member. Who here can become a member of Workers' Strike Back today? Please raise your hand. Woo! Please keep your hand up, and a volunteer will come around to help you sign up. Many of you are already a part of this movement and pay monthly membership dues, but it will take tremendous resources to combat big business and all the money they have stacked against us. AIPAC, the war profiteers, the health insurance lobby, and big business will all pour massive resources into Adam Smith's campaign. We have a real chance at winning and electing Kshama to Congress, which would deal a massive blow to the bosses and the ruling class in this country. But we can only do it if we organize a mass movement of thousands of working people making sacrifices to help us win, whether that be through volunteering or donating. We all need to raise our dues however much we can to help us build the kind of fighting organization that will be needed to build a powerful movement independent of the Democrats and the Republicans that can actually win an end to the genocide, the Holocaust of the 21st century. I'm going to give a few dollar amounts in the next few minutes, and if you can raise your dues by that much, please raise your hand and keep it raised until one of our volunteers comes by to process that dues increase. Kshama's opponent in her campaign for Congress is the corporate warmongering Democrat Adam Smith. Smith has received more than $500,000 from AIPAC to date. He is getting maxed out donations for his campaign from pro-Trump billionaire executives of dystopian corporations like Palantir, who have contracts with ICE and the US Army. We need working class donors to combat the corporate donations Smith is getting. It will take a fighting movement funded by working class people that are actively fighting for Kshama's campaign to win. Can anyone here raise their dues by $50 a month or more to help us build a fighting campaign for Congress? That's about $12 a week. Woo! Thank you. As everyone here knows, Kshama is campaigning on free healthcare by taxing the rich, and Workers Strike Back has launched a ballot initiative campaign to realize this demand in Seattle. If successful, the richest corporations in Seattle will be taxed $5 billion a year to make healthcare free for everyone in the city, including gender-affirming, dental, vision, and elder care. This could be a massive breakthrough for the movement for free public healthcare and could act as a battering ram to win it in other cities, states, and nationally. Winning free healthcare will not happen out of nowhere. Big businesses like Amazon donate tremendous sums of money to try and will donate tremendous sums of money to try and upend our ballot initiative, and it will take lots of resources to win. Raise your hand if you can raise dues by $25 to help build the fight for free healthcare for all, paid for by taxing the rich. That's about $6 a week. As many of you know, when Kshama was the lone socialist on the Seattle City Council, she won historic renters' rights laws like a $10 a month cap on late fees, 6-month notice of rent increases, a ban on winter evictions, a ban on school year evictions for students and teachers, and many more. All of these victories are a lifeline for working people in Seattle. These laws alone could save a single working person thousands of dollars a year from gouging landlords. We need a massive fight to expand these protections to every city nationally, and crucially for national rent control. If we want to pass national rent control, it will take a massive fight against corporate landlords and the whole political establishment. Workers Strike Back will need to be involved in any such fight, and we will need resources to make it happen. Can you raise your hand if you can raise your dues by $10 a month to help build the movement for rent control? As we talked about today, the Democratic Party is in a historic crisis, and there is no better time than now to build an independent movement. Building an independent movement will mean building Workers Strike Back in every city. In Peoria, for instance, our members have worked with National Coordinating Committee members and the Workers Strike Back full-timers to achieve some remarkable results. Peoria members have gone to public comment to oppose an anti-worker grocery tax, organized regular tables around the city and at various anti-war events, and organized regular watch parties that continue to draw in new layers of working people excited about Workers Strike Back and Kshama's independent socialist campaign for Congress. They just recently had a really successful table in Peoria at a Palestine event where they got over $200 in donations for Kshama's anti-genocide campaign. Yeah. This sort of success would not be possible without WSB members' dues. We also are building in other cities and need more resources to make those chapters a success. One other good example of this is Kshama and other Workers Strike Back members are going to a book event in New York City on September 24th and 25th, where Kshama will be speaking. These leading members of Workers Strike Back will be meeting with other members based in New York City about building a chapter and doing regular activity for our campaigns. Raise your hand if you can raise your dues by $5 or less to help build Workers Strike Back nationally to ensure that we capitalize on this historic moment to build an independent movement that can fight for and win our demands. Woo. Woo. Thank you so much to everyone who agreed to raise your dues or sign up to become a member today. Please make sure to keep your hand raised if you haven't been helped already.
Thank you to Jason and to Kshama for kicking off our discussion. And looking at the clock, we have around 20 to 25 minutes for our open discussion left in the meeting. This is a democratic organization, and one thing that means is we have these discussion periods in basically all of our meetings, and it's really useful for people to come in with their experience on this campaign or previous campaigns as well to contribute to the discussion that the group has. Since we're pretty tight on time, 3 minutes is a really short amount of time to say something, so I'm going to ask people to keep it to 4 max, but if you can do it in 3, I and everybody else will be really super grateful. So if you want to speak, raise your hand. I'll keep a list and give you a little nod when I see it, and then call people up basically in the order that I see them. So if you wanted to go first.
Okay, this is some good news. So, in 2016, when, who won, I was a property manager for many years on Capitol Hill, so I had a lot of contacts. And as I was just traveling around over a few days, I asked people that I was fairly certain were Trump voters that whether or not, if Bernie had been the Democratic nominee, would they have voted for him? And 7 of the 8 told me yes. So, I know we got problems with Bernie, but it's only gotten worse. And we are ripe for this. Ripe. Thank you.
Justin, then Calvin. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm Justin, member of Workers Strike Back. Kshama mentioned that Zoran Mamdani, who's become quite popular now, said he's trying to save the soul of the Democratic Party to make it a party for working people. Just as an aside, he also says he wants to work with the billionaires in New York City and the Democratic Party corporate establishment as well. So I think that even that project is a little bit suspect, but what is the soul of the Democratic Party, right? The soul of the Democratic Party is profit, war, genocide, exploitation of working people. That's what the Democratic Party is about. We cannot be trying to save it and bring it back up. We need to kick it while it's down and push it further down.
That's right.
We can look to what's happening in the UK as an example of what's possible. So their equivalent to the Democrats is the Labour Party. This is a party that has cut benefits for low-income working people, that has supported Israel's genocide, and that has reinforced the anti-immigrant attacks. Sounds pretty familiar to me. What are working people doing in the UK? They're not trying to save the Labour Party, they're starting a new party. Zara Sultana, a socialist member of parliament, has resigned from the Labour Party and launched a new party for working people and got another popular leader named Jeremy Corbyn to join in. It might be more now, but the last time I checked, over 800,000 people had signed up to get involved with this new effort. And this shows the importance of our campaign for Congress, right? What we could do with a national platform with a revolutionary socialist like Kshama in Congress. If she's elected, as she mentioned earlier, she said she'll call a mass rally in DC for her inauguration as she brings forward the first bill, her first bill to end all US military aid to Israel. This is the kind of platform that can galvanize working people and the kind of platform from which we can actually launch a new party that appeals to the millions of working people around this country who want to get involved to fight to end the genocide, stop the deportations, for free healthcare funded by taxing the rich, national rent control, and a massive expansion of social housing. So thank you.
As Kshama mentioned, we need to talk about the shifting political terrain in the context of the killing of Charlie Kirk. Kirk's killing represents a dangerous moment in U.S. history. The right wing is trying to violently capitalize on the assassination of Kirk to go after working class movements and the left. In fact, they immediately indicated that they planned to do so even when there was no evidence of political motives and no suspect identified. Already we are seeing firings and political targeting of people just for voicing their views. Donald Trump and the right wing are clearly salivating at the prospect of launching a brutal offensive against the left. We urgently need to fight back. However, we also must fully reject the methods of terror on display in this killing. These methods are a dead end for our movements. Throughout history, the way working people have won change has been through powerful mass movements, mass strike action, fighting to take major corporations into democratic public ownership, and through building our own political parties. The most fundamental change comes through revolution, Karl Marx was right. As socialists, we know that revolution is an act of the millions, not of frustrated individuals or small groups. It is the product of mass struggles and powerful working class movements that can successfully take the reins of society away from the billionaires and into the hands of the working class, to create a society run in the common interest, based on solidarity, genuine democracy, and equality. To begin creating that society, we need to overthrow capitalism, because it cannot be reformed. We reject the methods of terror used against Kirk precisely because our methods are mass movements and revolution. However, we also must completely reject and condemn the waves of hypocrisy coming from the halls of power. Both Republican and Democratic politicians, including Kshama's opponent, Congressman Adam Smith, have loudly spoken against political violence, yet they themselves are fully complicit in mass political violence and state terrorism. These same politicians, including Adam Smith, have repeatedly voted for tens of billions in military aid for the 21st century Holocaust being carried out in Gaza, to block UN food aid for Palestinians, and for war after bloody war, for brutal attacks on American working people. They have backed, and still back, the killing of 500,000 people in Gaza and the mass starvation taking place in front of our eyes. Now, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's killing, they would have us think that suddenly they believe every life is precious. Some of them say we must honor Charlie Kirk's legacy. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom says the best way to honor Charlie Kirk's memory is to continue his work. While this could sound understandable to some who don't want to criticize the dead, we cannot forget what real, immense human damage Charlie Kirk and the movement he helped lead have done. Kirk was a longtime supporter of the brutal occupation and genocide in Gaza, a leader in the anti-trans assault, a misogynist and antagonist towards women's rights, a cheerleader for mass deportations and other vicious attacks on the working class. He was a dedicated fighter for Trump and the Republicans' trillion-dollar assault on Medicaid and Medicare that we all just witnessed and which will claim many thousands of lives. Calling for the continuation of Kirk's work only reveals once again that Newsom and the Democratic Party have infinitely more in common with the Kirks of the world than they do with working class and oppressed people. When was the last time Democrats like Newsom showed concern for the Palestinian people? Instead, they have backed their slaughter and this genocide to the hilt. Where is the honoring of the many millions killed by U.S. imperialism in Iraq, Vietnam, or countless other countries with the full support of both warmongering parties? When leaders like Malcolm X, Che Guevara, Rosa Luxemburg, and Martin Luther King were brutally murdered, capitalist politicians didn't mourn. Some of them celebrated. Some of these killings were by the capitalist state. We must reject both the deceit of the capitalist politicians and any confusion on the left over what methods of terror like this represent and how they will in fact embolden the capitalist state and the right wing. Some on the left have commented that we don't need to worry about a crackdown on our movements because we're already facing one and it can't get worse. This is woefully mistaken. The current level of repression, as horrific as it is far from the level of the Red Scare of the 1920s, in which countless socialists and labor organizers were murdered, or the assassinations of Black Panthers and civil rights leaders in the 60s and 70s, or the many horrific examples internationally like the mass killings in Chile following the US-led coup. But while recognizing the real danger, the solution is not to go on the defensive any more than it is to honor the legacy of Kirk. We need to do the opposite, go on the offensive to build militant mass movements to politically fight for the interests of working people and the oppressed, to fight for an end to the genocide in Gaza and all military aid to Israel, to fight for free health care for all by taxing the rich, for an end to the deportations and shutting down ICE and the detention centers. To be successful, we have to become far better organized, and that's part of what we're talking about doing here. We need to become the real left political threat that Trump and the right wing pretend that we are. To do so, we need to build broad working class unity. Unity across race, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, religion. Unity which includes working people who agree with what we are fighting for, regardless of whether they have previously voted Republican, Democratic, or Independent, or whether they are native-born or immigrant. We need to build this unity by fighting for our common interests as working people against the billionaires and their system of capitalism, which is based on theft and the exploitation of all of us as well as the environment. Lastly, we need to be crystal clear that to defeat the far right and to achieve anything, we need to sever all ties with the Democratic Party. We cannot afford false ideas of unities with this anti-worker, warmongering institution. Its illusions in the possibility of reforming this party that are holding back the growth of left movements and have enabled the right wing to grow and become more dangerous. We need to build independent movements and independent campaigns like Kshama's, and unfortunately there isn't another campaign like Kshama's, and prepare the ground for a new party. There is mass support for almost every demand we are fighting for, and both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are viciously opposed to every single one of them. That says a lot. Working people are desperate for an independent fight against both parties of capitalism and genocide, and we need to help lead that.
Pardon me for taking a second. I want to thank Kshama and Calvin and everyone who's spoken. I think that it is, like, the things that Calvin brought up are really extremely important right now. I am Natalie, I'm a member of Workers Strike Back, and I dedicated a lot of time to fighting against the recall and fighting for the tax on Amazon that we won. And the reason that I did that was that I was so upset and so mad that so many people, there were, like, everyone I knew wanted change, wanted something different. And so I saw in Kshama's leadership that strong class analysis and that strong, extremely sharp Marxist leadership that I was looking for and am deeply inspired by. And that made me go out as much as I could to try to fight against the recall and to fight for a tax on Amazon, to fund affordable housing. And these are the things that we desperately need. And like Kshama said, that is how you get, like, the best reforms, is cutting through the system and realizing that the people that continually ask for less and less, we need to lower our sights. We can't keep fighting for these starry-eyed demands that you have. You need to lower your expectations. That's bullshit. That's fucking stupid. We need to actually fight for what we need, and that's the only way we can win. We don't lower our sights artificially because some asshole in Congress says we need to. What we do is we fight with that clear analysis, that clear-eyed understanding of they are our enemy. Our class is at odds with them and will never be able to reconcile that difference. And that's what we need to do, and that's why I'm going to dedicate as much as I possibly can to fighting for this run for Congress and to continue to fight for what working class people need in this moment. And yeah, I just hope everyone comes out and does that too. Thank you so much.
We've got about 8-9 minutes left in this agenda point and an open speakers list so far. Is that a hand? Yeah, get on up here.
Hi, my name is Mark. I don't represent anybody in particular. I am just mad at capital accumulationists. I did want to say something. I did want to read a quote from Audre Lorde before I made my point. Some of you may have heard this before. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us to temporarily beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. And this fact is only threatening to those people who still define the master's house as their only source of income or of support. And the reason I say this is because I hear a lot of talk, a lot of time about, oh, we need to rebuild the party, we need to do these things. But I keep seeing the same tools being used over and over again, the tools of the oligarch, the tools of the plutocrat. I mean, how many Windows machines are there? How many Apple machines are there? How many people are on Facebook or LinkedIn or any of these companies that we want to use to organize society but are owned by powers that use algorithms to shape how we organize? My suggestion, especially in this time where we need new ideas and need new approaches that are outside of the system that has been built to contain us, is to reject those and find social media that isn't owned by capitalists. Find office suites that aren't owned by capitalists. Find operating systems for our computers that aren't owned by capitalists so that we can have a chance to organize together securely and privately. As the current administration would have you not remember, you can have, you can't have privacy without security, but you can have security without privacy. So as we get closer and closer to a police state, we need to stop using these tools to organize and communicate with each other in order to have a chance to grow a movement that is somewhat independent of the tools we use to build it. Like I said, I'm not the important one. Whoever I am is really important. What I'm trying to do is help build this movement with tools that are important, that are made by people for people, not by billionaires for profits. I'm sure there's a lot more questions about that, but please consider it. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
This is off the cuff, I apologize. My name's Sam, and I'm very excited to be supporting Kshama's independent anti-war campaign for Congress. It's been, the point has been made, and I think it's an important one, that we need campaigns, fighting campaigns like Kshama's, and there aren't at the moment other campaigns like Kshama's, and that's because of the fighting legacy and the independence from both of the two parties, the Democratic and Republican parties, and the way that we took on the bosses and organized working people, and the leadership, the political clarity, the class analysis, the laser focus that Kshama brought to every struggle of what is in the interest of the working class. That's how she starts, everything that she thinks about, that's at the starting point of all of it. And we are swimming in, all of these tools. We are building a campaign that the Seattle Times, the New York Times, the mainstream media, even much of the left media seems determined to black out. And we have to cut through that. And, we get advice, quote unquote advice from, other campaigns on the left that there's, the variations of this of if we were nicer or easier to work with. These are the criticisms that Kshama always got on the city council. All of these ways of, if we just worked better with other people, and an extension of that is what, can't you just work inside the Democratic Party? I think that is the one tool that we cannot. And we see these other candidates who try to do that, like Zohran Mamdani now taking endorsement from taking endorsements from Barack Obama, from Kathy Hochul, these other characters like this, and there is this question of what type of strategy is going to be needed to win the things that we need, and it's not going to be one that any of these figures find to be polite. So we need to cut through all of the ways that we are being iced out in the media, and that means fighting to make this campaign visible. It means not being apologetic about the approach that we're taking. Doing things like going out and painting Seattle red with our posters and our campaign slogans tonight, doing these banner drops that were mentioned, and more than anything else, just demonstrating that we mean what we say, that we are going to use this campaign to turn politics in Washington on its head, just the same way that Kshama did when she was elected to Seattle City Council. And I've been out on tabling and door knocking shifts in parts of the district outside of Seattle, down in Federal Way. There's actually people from Federal Way who are here at this meeting tonight, which I think is really, really exciting. That shows the dynamic that we're generating all the way at the other end of the district. And people are electrified because we are going into this area where, it's a Republican adjacent group that holds a majority on that city council, and that doesn't reflect that people are, somehow more conservative. That might be the DSA type of conclusion. What it reflects is that people are fed up with both parties, and you knock on doors and people are like, oh God, not another politician showing up at my door. We have to cut through that and say, we are building movements to fight for the things that working people need. We're gonna organize and win, a $10 late rent fee cap, just like we won in Seattle by mobilizing the public comment, by organizing working people and not allowing the Democratic and Republican politicians to continue with their business as usual approach of doing everything behind closed doors with representatives of the Chamber of Commerce and Amazon and all the rest of that. So, this is what it's about. We have to be unapologetic about what is in the interest of the working class, what is it going to take to win, how do we need to get organized, and how do we gain the maximum possible amount of exposure for that fighting strategy.
I've got Gwen up, and then we're out of time. We'll move on to the next agenda point.
Yeah, well, you just said a lot of what I was going to say, so thanks. But I'm Gwendolyn, Worker Strike Back member, been for a long time. I work for Kshama's campaign for Congress. You can probably tell I was walking around here with a clipboard earlier. But basically that means I've been all over District 9 talking to people, ordinary working class people from all kinds of places and backgrounds, ages and ethnicities. And the thing that unites all of them, well, it's two things. One, no one's ever heard of Adam Smith. Two, the people who have hate his fucking guts. And the other thing is everyone is pissed off about and angry about this genocide that needed to end. Like, it doesn't matter who you talk to, young, old, like blue collar, white collar, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, every recognized person sees this horrific thing happening. They want it to end, and the people who claim to represent them, these two rotten parties, are doing nothing about it. In fact, they are enabling it, they are supporting it to the bloody hilt. And they want to change, in fact, like people saying like, oh, it's conservative out there. Well, people are actually happy to talk to us. I've never really had someone be like, well, okay, there are a couple people, but it's just, okay, if you want to be more angry at me than the genocide, that's fine. Go on. But most people, like, it doesn't matter. They want to talk to someone. They want to see a way forward. I come to knock people's doors, interrupt their day on a Saturday, and I leave and they say, thanks for talking to me. Thanks for interrupting my day to talk about this. And that's because, what we're seeing out there, like in District 9, across the United States, across the entire world, is rampant corporate greed, landlord greed. People are being taken advantage of, taken for everything, every red cent they own, left, right, exploited every which way, and no one is fighting for them. No one is coming to save them either. We as working people have to be the ones to organize the fight back, because the Democratic Party is a party of liars. They have no soul, like was said earlier. They will lie their way into stealing everything working class people. We have to be the ones to fight for ourselves. And, it's not a coincidence. Like, Adam Smith, no one's ever heard of him because he's never done anything for his constituents. He's done everything for his real masters, the landlord lobby, the war lobby, sending billions to the genocide. That's why his #1 donor is AIPAC. He's done everything for the arms industry, supported every war, blocked UN food aid, called anti-war protesters left-wing fascists. He started that rhetoric that Trump is now using to attack us and imprison us. It's not a coincidence that everyone is poor and everything is poor and rich getting richer. We are poor because they're rich. It's not a coincidence. That's the root cause. That's why these two parties of big business will rob us for everything and lie the whole way, is because their masters' profits, the billionaires' profits, every cent of it comes from our labor, our work. We're the ones who make society run, and everyone knows it, everyone's pissed off, and they want to change, they just don't know what the direction is, and that's why they have to be out there and set an example to reach these people. And I think they're going to talk in a second, but that's why this rally we have to is so important, because there are millions of people pissed off this genocide, and this rally is a way to reach tens of thousands of those people, get them active, show them there's a real working class fight, show them what working class fights look like, and get organized to fight back against these attacks against us, and take back take back the wealth that we create that's stolen every day by the billionaire class, because we need it to goddamn live, and they need it for yachts.
All right, a great discussion, everybody. Yes, I think Sam and Gwen ended us on a really good note. I know that we had someone coming up talking about, maybe we need to have alternate devices, alternate social medias, and I think what we really need are revolutionary ideas that will overthrow capitalism, right? It's a distraction to try and spin our wheels to focus on these alternate projects. We absolutely are here tonight because we want to overthrow capitalism, and I think Sam and Gwen spoke really well to that. And as others said in the discussion, we need a campaign exactly like this one that has a track record of dismantling the profits, taking the profits away from capital and putting them in the pockets of working people here in Seattle and across the country. And I have, the next step to build this really critical campaign is to have, as Gwen said, a really successful, massive rally. And I'm gonna call Em up to talk about it. Em is a member of the National Coordinating Committee, the elected leadership of Workers Strike Back, and is the campaign organizer. And so she's gonna come up to talk about how we can have the most successful, biggest rally possible. So come on up.
Hey everybody, as Shirley said, my name is Em Smith. I'm the campaign manager for Kshama's campaign for Congress. We launched Kshama's campaign a little over 3 months ago, and in those 3 months we have already built a powerful campaign. We've gone out and talked to working people about our 4 key demands and how to win them. End the genocide and starvation in Gaza, no military aid, no occupation, stop the deportations, shut down the detention centers, shut down ICE, free healthcare for all, tax the rich, and national rent control and a mass expansion in social housing. Over the last 3 months, more than 2,200 people have donated to Kshama's campaign from all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. We've raised over $200,000 with an average donation of just $25. Nearly 150 volunteers have done more than 1,000 hours of door knocking, tabling, phone banking, and postering for this campaign. We've put up more than 2,500 campaign posters across Seattle and the 9th Congressional District, as well as nationally. We've had campaign events in Seattle, Renton, Federal Way, SeaTac, Tukwila, Des Moines, Washington. Those are all in the 9th Congressional District. Workers Strike Back members have also organized tables in Olympia, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, Peoria, Illinois, Ann Arbor and Kalamazoo, Michigan, Rochester and Owatonna, Minnesota, Fort Lauderdale and Wilton Manors, Florida, San Francisco and Los Angeles, California, and Kansas City, Missouri. And we have an upcoming table for anyone on the live stream who's from New York. It was already mentioned on September 24th and September 25th. We'll be having tables in New York City. We need to take seriously what it would mean to elect Kshama Sawant as the first ever revolutionary socialist to US Congress. That would be a historic step forward for the workers' movement and in the fight to win these demands and many others. And we have a real shot to win. This is the only campaign nationally that is clear about what's happening, is clear about the fact that both the Republican and the Democratic Party are responsible for the genocide in Gaza. A campaign that has bold demands, that's putting forward a strategy to win those demands, and has a real track record of winning major victories for the working class and not selling out. But this is a massive battle, and as we know, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, AIPAC, the Zionist lobby, all of these forces, big business, the real estate industry, they will fight like hell to stop Kshama from getting into Congress and fighting for working people. Adam Smith has received over $500,000 from AIPAC and the Zionist lobby in his career. He's backed by pro-Trump billionaires like Palantir CEO Alex Karp, and that money is just the start. To give you a sense of what they're capable of and willing to do, AIPAC spent $2.7 million in a primary election in New York City to defeat Jamal Bowman for putting forward even the mildest criticism of the Israeli state, What are they going to do to stop an independent socialist who's fighting to end the genocide in Gaza, who's calling for an end to all U.S. military aid? They're going to fight like hell to stop us. We are going to face also huge resistance from the gatekeepers and the misleaders in the so-called progressive wing of the Democratic Party, the NGO and the business unionist leadership, and we are already facing that resistance. Last month, Adam Smith, the guy who voted to create ICE, the guy who voted to cut $150 billion in funding for Medicare and Medicaid under Bill Clinton, he was invited by the leadership of the Laborers Union, which represents construction workers and some public sector workers. They were invited by the union leadership to host a campaign fundraiser for Adam Smith at their union hall. The leadership of AFSCME, AFGE, those are both public sector unions, IAM, the machinists union that represents Boeing workers and others, pilots union that represents American Airlines workers, has donated to Adam Smith without a vote of their union membership. The Progressive Democrat media, the Progressive Democrat aligned media has refused to cover Kshama's campaign. Jacobin, which is the most prominent publication of the Democratic Socialists of America, the Young Turks, Breaking Point's, not an ounce of coverage of Kshama's campaign. If we are not strong enough to break through these gatekeepers who want to protect the Democratic Party, we will not win this campaign. And in fact, if we can't break through those gatekeepers, we won't win anything for the working class. On the other hand, if we make a serious breakthrough, we can deal a historic blow to the Democratic Party, to the Republican Party, and big business, and to capitalism and imperialism itself. And Kshama and our movement have a track record of making those kinds of breakthroughs, but we are going to have to fight for that. At this moment, the best chance that we have to make a breakthrough in this campaign is with a mass rally that our campaign is calling for on Sunday, October 12th at 2 p.m. Pacific at Langston Hughes Performing Arts Center. It's just down the road for those of you who are here in person. And we need hundreds of people to be there in person. This also needs to be a national rally for those watching on the live stream. The US Congress is filled to the brim with representatives for the billionaires and US imperialism. It is long past time that we elect someone who represents us and is going to fight back. So wherever you are, we have a stake in building this campaign and we need you to be involved. We have 4 weeks to build for this rally. We've set a target of 300 in person at the rally, and if we want to do that, we have to talk to many more hundreds of people than that. That means tabling, door knocking, postering, banner standouts like the one we did this morning. Over a third of our donors have come from tables and door knocks like what we did this Saturday, where we got 75 donors, raised over $1,500 out at a Palestine Solidarity rally. In Peoria 2 weeks ago, for those of you nationally, to give an example of what's happening, a table in Peoria raised over $200 for this campaign from 13 donors in just 2 hours. And sign up on the website to build this campaign in your city. We also have phone banking every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Everybody, especially those watching on the live stream, should sign up for that on the website. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, and we are having a week of action leading up to October 12th, starting with a mega canvas on October 5th. That's a Sunday at 2 p.m. in Cal Anderson Park in Seattle. We need you at that rally, and we need campaign tables around the country and action around the country as well. We also want people to come to Seattle if you're able for any time, a week, 2 days, the day of the rally, whatever you can do, come to that rally, help us build for that rally as well if you can make it out to Seattle. If you can't, help organize a watch party, get in touch with us so we can help you do that. We need to take every single avenue to build for this rally and to build a powerful campaign to defeat Adam Smith, to defeat the warmongers in the Democratic Party. And right after this meeting, as been said, to emphasize this, I mentioned we've put up over 2,500 posters so far in the city. We want to double that. We want to put up 3,000 more between now and October 12th, and tonight's going to be critical for getting a big chunk of those put up. So think about what it would mean to have Kshama Sawant in US Congress to take this fighting, movement-building approach to Washington, D.C., to make life hell for the Democratic and Republican politicians, mobilizing 10,000 people on day one of an inauguration to launch a fight to end U.S. military aid to Israel, to win free healthcare by taxing the rich, using her platform to build independent movements and ballot initiatives like the one we're fighting for in Seattle, to win free healthcare by expanding the Amazon tax to make healthcare free for everyone in Seattle. This is a long campaign, but it's made up of critical moments. This rally on October 12th is a critical moment. Right after this rally today is a critical moment. to go out postering and to build this campaign. So I hope that everyone can join us. Yeah, thank you for being here. Let's strike a blow against this deeply unpopular Democratic Party by winning this fucking campaign and sending Kshama Sawant to US Congress.
Hello, everybody. I know we said a hard 7:30 cutoff, but I'll be quick. I introduced myself at the beginning of this meeting. My name is Matthew Malloy, and I just want to start with a short story about myself. I was 16 years old when I first heard Bernie Sanders speak about the fight for Medicare for all. At the time, my family did not have health care, and to hear someone talk about health care as a human right literally changed my life. It set me on the course that I am on now. And I was deeply saddened and disillusioned the day he walked out on that stage and endorsed Hillary Clinton. It wasn't until 2021, by the grace of independent media, that I first heard Kshama Sawant speak, not only about the need for fighting demands like free healthcare for all, but the need for a concrete strategy to win those demands. I was so inspired by what I heard that a month and a half ago, I packed up everything I had and I moved across this country to build this campaign. Working people deserve to hear the demands that we have. Working people deserve to hear our fighting strategy, that we are going to move heaven and earth to make Seattle the first city to win free public health care as our strategy to winning it nationwide.
That's right.
That begins tonight, as Em said, by plastering the city with our posters. I want Seattle to wake up tomorrow shocked by how many posters we get up tonight.
That's right.
I spent all day packing bags for all of you. I want to see every single person in here that is physically capable to join us in postering tonight. We have tape, we have staples, we have wheat paste. We will walk you through the processes. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who hosted and spoke tonight, everyone who got up to share and speak. And yeah, I just wanted to close out this Workers' Strike Back meeting, everybody. So we're going to be meeting out in the hall. For those of us that can come out and postering, just go out the first set of doors to the right. And thank you so much, and solidarity, everybody.